Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. This week on the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, I'm speaking with Jenny Chadima. Jenny is a trained spiritual director and retreat facilitator, as well as the Director of Development for Mission of Hope, a Christ-centered ministry providing emergency relief, restoration, and development services in the Cedar Rapids area. In this episode, Jenny shares how discernment and listening to God's voice led her to accepting her new role at Mission of Hope. We discuss her journey to sobriety and how sharing on social media opened up an opportunity for her to support others struggling with addiction. Jenny also shares a beautiful entry from her personal journal that will encourage you. Be sure to check the show notes to learn how you can join Jenny for her Midlife Spirituality Retreat next year. Jenny Chadima, welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am just honored that you would ask me to be a guest here with you.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. I was thinking of you actually when I was considering what to do for the final season of 2024. And I asked my husband, and we'll explain why my husband factors into this equation here in a second. I asked him, I said, do you think Jenny would do an episode? And he's like, well, I don't know. You should ask her. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask her to do an episode, because I think the theme of this season really aligns and fits with where you're at and what you've done in the past and what you're doing now. And so I'm just so glad that you're here to share. Before we get into everything, could you just briefly introduce yourself, share about your family and what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Jenny Chadima. I am a trained spiritual director, retreat facilitator, and I'm also the Director of Development for Mission of Hope. I'm a wife, a mom, a dog mom, a cat mom.
All the mom things.
All the mom things. And really just, the question when you ask someone, who are you? I mean, that to me, I'm like, who are you? In our culture, in our society, we put such an emphasis on what we do. Yeah. And so really, as I was kind of thinking about that, like, who are you? That's something really for me as someone who's in her 43rd year of life that I'm recently exploring in a new way.
Yeah.
And so, there's a pause in that when it's like, who are you? It's like, The honest answer, I'm figuring that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there is something about entering this season of life that causes you to take a pause and really look at that. Who am I? Where's my purpose? Where's my calling? Not just, you talked about kind of putting ourselves, in boxes or labeling ourselves as I'm a mom and we're all those things, of course, and those are very wonderful, important parts of our lives. But at the core of who we are, where am I called? Where is that calling, that purpose? How am I using the gifts, that I've been given to live that out? And that's a big, heady, kind of weighty topic, but I think it's good. I think it's good to think about it. Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm glad that you're doing that. I do that too. I know, sometimes you'll hear, I've got a son who's a senior and people say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think about that to myself. Well, I'm 50. So am I considered a grown up? What do I want to be? I feel like I'm just getting started in certain parts of my life. So yeah, I think think that's good. I love that you're contemplating that. Absolutely. Well, we know each other, and this is how my husband factors into this. We know each other because my husband works for your husband at Hawkeye Fire and Safety here in town. I don't even know. I think Dan's been there like, oh my gosh, 13 years this month, actually. Or no, last month, I think. He's been there a long time and loves it. It's, I know my family had a family-owned business. And this is a family-owned company, and it feels more like family to me. When we all get together and celebrate. We just had a celebration in June, and it just feels like a family getting together for like a big reunion. And I know most of the folks see each other there every day, but for spouses that are coming in that don't. It just feels like you're getting together with your family and having fun and celebrating. Austin always does such a great job of just really talking about each person there in such a heartfelt, meaningful way. Yeah. And I think when you work for a family-owned small business, I think that's what you get. You get that family feel. So
yes. And I think, his grandpa started the company, and then his parents owned the business for a number of years before transitioning it to Austin. But the culture that they created is something I think that has transferred from generation to generation. And it's wonderful to hear as someone who's a spouse to someone that works there, that you also have that same sense, because I think that's really what they are wanting to cultivate. There's such a heart and a passion, at least for my husband, I can speak into that of what they do and who they are. And so to hear that from a spouse of an employee, I think that just speaks volumes.
Yeah. I mean, I know Dan and I have talked about this before. Prior to working at Hawkeye, I would say that he had jobs. He had jobs that he went in and punched in and worked and punched out. But I think with Hawkeye, for the first time for him, at least, it feels more like a career more than a job. You know what I mean? He really cares about the work that he and his, fellow employees are doing. And, it's important work. It's a huge safety component to the work they do. And so we've been very grateful for the opportunities that he has with Hawkeye, and just how well you take care of everybody there, and the care and the concern. And it's really great. It's been great to be a part of the Hawkeye Fire and Safety family for sure. So,
and I know Austin would be lost without Dan.
Yeah,
so.
Well, it's funny because I know in the past they're both very passionate, strong people. And, I think they both care so much, you know, and that's what's great. That's what's great about it. And there's a lot of folks there that care. And so, I think Austin's guidance and leadership, especially since kind of really taking the reins over, which is a big deal to do, has been much appreciated. So it's all good. We love it. We love it. Well, I'm so glad that you're here because, again, when I was thinking about the theme of this season, I really thought about you and your recent, new position at Mission of Hope. And so I'd love for you to share about that a little bit more, also with some of the other experiences that you've had with doing the work that you've done. We'll talk about the retreat that you're going to be facilitating, as well as your recovery journey as well. But first, can you share a little more about what Mission of Hope is, what you all do there, a little about your role, and just what that experience has been like so far for you?
Yeah. So Mission of Hope is a Christ-centered ministry. We provide emergency relief, restoration, and development services for folks in the Cedar Rapids area. Our ministry was founded in 2002 by a woman named Barb Furman, and she was a chaplain in the Lynn County Jail. And she saw a need for folks that as they were transitioning out of incarceration, that there weren't a lot of support services for folks at that time. Now, since then, the ministry has transformed and changed over the last 22 years. However, a large majority of the folks that we serve are, people experiencing homelessness. It could be folks struggling with substance use disorder, folks just experiencing poverty. And so the ways that we are able to come alongside folks is that we have a lunch program, and we serve a thoughtfully balanced meal Monday through Friday. And this lunch meal is provided by outside resources. So that could be churches, businesses, organizations. So we're very fortunate in that aspect. We also have a food pantry. And so through our food pantry, this is non-perishable food items that are donated. Again, this is all coming from either businesses, organizations, individuals that have donated. We have a clothing closet where we're able to supply clothing for emergent needs, as well as some of those kind of emergency relief aspects. We also have opportunities for spiritual growth and addiction support. And so right now, we've got a few different programs that we're offering. The Alpha program, it's facilitated by Faith Life Church. They are...
Yay, shout out to Faith Life. That's my church that I go to. So I had to get a little plug for them. Yay, Faith Life.
We love them. They are great supporters of Mission of Hope. And so they are facilitating, it's called the Alpha program. It's an 11-week program for folks to kind of explore some of the life's bigger questions, as well as the Christian faith. We have a Bible study each Thursday after lunch. We have Hope Recovery, and so that kind of mixes the scripture with the 12 steps. So a few different options for just our folks to either grow spiritually, find support on their recovery journey, as well as kind of helping to meet the emergent needs as well. We're a nonprofit ministry. We really don't receive any government funding. So again, we rely solely on the support of the community. I was just giving a presentation yesterday to New Covenant Bible Church. And it's just, obviously there's always a need. The needs are growing. We see this with more and more people that are experiencing homelessness or just struggles. And so while, we are able to serve, I think in July, our numbers were like 15,000 lunch meals that we've served, which was like the max number in 2023, by the way. So if that kind of tells you, I think about
the
30%
need is growing.
Yes, there's an increase there, but we're just so grateful for the support that we have, because we truly could not do what we do without the community coming alongside us as well. So I started as a volunteer a few years ago. At the time I had my own business, and I really felt God calling me to kind of take it to the streets is what I sort of heard. And so that kind of led me to Mission of Hope, and I started helping. Oh, I forgot to mention, we also have emergency food that we hand out, and this comes from food rescuing. Okay. So this is like, we go to some of our Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, things like that, and we pick up food that they would be getting rid of, perfectly good food, and we repurpose it. So, but amazing. All of that to be said, I started off as a volunteer in the, helping hand out emergency food, and then transitioned to offering a weekly Bible study. I joined the board of directors, and then just last fall, I was approached for the position as the director of development. And so I've been in my position now since December 4th, I think was my start date. Yeah. So about 10-ish months. Director of development and programming. So I think a lot of times, we think of fundraising in development, which is certainly what I'm doing. But I read a book recently called The Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen. And there was a quote in there that I wanted to share, because it's really transformed the way that I see and just my view of what I'm doing. Because I've sort of questioned, not sort of, I've questioned a lot of like, really, God, this is really where you want me?
Right.
But it says that fundraising is proclaiming what we believe in such a way that we offer other people an opportunity to participate with us in our vision and mission.
Mm-hmm.
We're just extending this invite, right? To like join us in the work that God is doing. And so my heart is for the people. And I have been working with people experiencing homelessness, addiction, incarceration, or coming out of incarceration. I've been working in that sphere as a volunteer for 15 plus years. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing and the folks that I'm working with or coming alongside isn't new, but getting paid for it is.
Yeah, right. And having kind of that ownership of that role and going out and making, creating and cultivating the partnerships, whether it be with other churches, organizations, companies, leaders, to help support the programming and the services that are offered through Mission of Hope. That's it's like a whole nother level up, right? From, volunteering and offering time is so critical and so important. And then taking it into a, like you said, paid professional role to say, okay, it's not just, fundraising. It's really going out and finding out who we can partner with and who will come alongside our mission and support the needs that we have that will then in turn benefit all those that we serve. And that's awesome. When you're describing this to me and your past experience and now this role, I'm like, Jenny is perfect for this. Like God created you. I mean, probably for lots of things, but for this, I mean, wow, awesome. That's fantastic. And every role, whether it's a volunteer role or a paid professional role, has joys and challenges and ups and downs. Yeah. But when it's something that you're like, I can take these skills and knowledge and experience that I have and really help this organization grow and cultivate these partnerships, that's just got to feel really good. So that's awesome.
And the funny thing is that I originally turned the job down. So it had been extended. The offer had been extended to me and I prayed about it for a couple weeks. And at the time I really was kind of in this period of discernment of really sensing a call to the church. And I wasn't sure if that also meant pastoring, which can be kind of taboo depending upon which faith tradition you're into, right? And women in that position.
Pastors,
and so that in and of itself, praying about, okay, God, am I to work for the church? Am I to, follow what I'm sensing here? That had also been something that I had been praying about for a couple years. And so slowly I had been kind of taking on different opportunities. I became a trained spiritual director, and I did start working part-time for our church, and I was given opportunities to preach and share. And so at the time when this offer came through, I had just accepted a part-time position at the church. I still had my own business. Had so many volunteer opportunities, and I was just kind of like, where am I going to fit this in?
Right.
And how does this work? And so after praying for a couple of weeks, I thought, this role needs someone full-time, because it was offered originally part-time. I need someone that's going to be able to give it all they've got. And I thought, I don't know if I could do that. Right. Long story short, a couple weeks later, it was probably, maybe closer to a month, I had just gone to a training with our pastors, and I was sitting in the airport on my way back, and I just felt like I heard so loudly, why are you not taking this opportunity? And so I circled back with the executive director, and I just said, hey, is that offer still on the table? And he said, yeah, I just kept praying that you'd keep praying about it.
Wow.
So here we are.
Yeah. It's like, when God speaks those things into us, I've heard a lot of different, people say this, we have to listen, right? And you were discerning and you were listening. And then even when we think, not right time for me, you were doing amazing things, but God wasn't done with that, right? He was like, no, just wait. And so you had this other person at Mission of Hope praying about it, right? God was doing a work there. And then, you're sitting in an airport, and he's like, okay, come on. What do I have to do? Put a flashing neon sign in front of your face. Right. I've had so many times like that where I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I was supposed to do this or not do that or whatever. I love those kind of stories because again, I think it just really hones in that there are, and anyone listening out there, if you're in that place of discernment, if you're trying to decide between, plan A or plan B or whatever, really, really listen. There is a message coming to you, and it may not be coming directly to you. It might be coming through other people who are speaking, into you. So be aware. I love when that happens. I love when that happens. I think that is so great. Well, like I said, I think you're the perfect person for this role, and I'm really excited to see what you're going to continue to do. You've already been doing a lot, but continuing to do with Mission of Hope. I will link in the show notes how people can be a part of it. They can volunteer. They can be a part of the mission there because it's so important. Obviously, the statistics that you were sharing makes it really apparent that there is a massive need out there. And, it's incumbent upon us to be the hands and feet of Christ, and that's what you guys are up to over there. So that's really exciting.
Thank you.
You talked about you're owning your own business for a while, and now you are continuing to do some facilitation of retreats and things. Can you share a little more about that and about the retreat you have coming up in June?
Yeah. So prior to working at Mission of Hope, I did have a business offering coaching retreats and spiritual direction for women. It was something that I feel like I've just faced a lot of like fork in the road type of scenarios. And it was something that was a dream. I mean, it was a dream to be able to do what I was doing, to kind of lead with my experience and also specific knowledge and training, but to be able to come alongside women on their journey of healing, wholeness, and intimacy with Christ through those kind of 3 avenues of coaching, retreats, and spiritual direction was so fulfilling. And it really became such a big part of who I was.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why this time of transition, this time of taking on this new role it's felt like a roller coaster because there's been so much that I've had to let go of, so much that maybe my identity was wrapped up in, and not to say it's good or bad. It just is. And so, retreats is something that I do still offer, and I just love. I just love retreats. I just facilitated one at the end of September called Deeper with God. And so what these retreats look like, it's a weekend experience. The last few retreats I've hosted at Our Lady of the Prairie Retreat Center in Wheatland, Iowa.
Okay.
And it's an opportunity to kind of step away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, to lean in and just ground yourself in stillness and prayer and a deeper awareness of God's presence that's with you, whether that's through nature or small group connection or prayer or silence and solitude. We incorporate all of those things over those couple days, and inevitably, each time I facilitate one of these retreats, I too am always just feeling like I'm so in need, and just the ways that God meets us there individually, collectively. It's just such a beautiful experience. And so I do still make room for that in my life at least a couple times a year. So the next one that I have coming up will be about midlife spirituality. And
bingo, perfect. Love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
So that will be June 27th through the 29th. I know that that's several months away, but You can sign up. There's room for 12 women. These are women only. So there's room for 12 women total. The investment is $175, which is so reasonable. When I was kind of offering these retreats apart from a retreat center, I would rent an Airbnb. I would buy all the food. I would cook all the food.
Oh my
I would
gosh.
do all the things.
Yeah.
But at that time in my life, I had the margin to do those things, and I really enjoyed it. But that also came at a higher price point, you know? So this, I feel like, is just a much more reasonable option for women to just really invest in themselves.
I love that so much. First of all, the focus area for this retreat could not be more appropriate. So I will link again to the show notes in this episode of how people can get signed up and learn more about it if they're interested and connecting with you on that. I think as you pointed out, in our culture, to be able to take that precious time and invest in your well-being, your spiritual health, and your relationship with Christ is so needed. I think more than ever. I think a lot of us are feeling so pulled in so many directions, and to be able to take that time away and just share with others. You said sounds like there's some small group work there. Also just things individually you can do. That's so important. I'm so glad that you're continuing to offer those because it's so needed. And I think as women too, we tend to, I'm not saying all women are like this, but a lot of us really prioritize the needs of everyone else in our lives, right? Above our own. And so to be able to give women a space to come and really focus on themselves is so, so needed. And I'm so glad that you're doing it. That's great. I'm glad that you hung on to that part of that calling for yourself too. That's great.
I'm sort of like fighting for that.
Right.
I'm like, but I love this so much. Can I please still do this thing too?
Yeah. I want to do this and this. Well, but as I think about that though, I think there's a really great message in there because I think we do all tend to kind of try to fight and hang on to it all. Right. And I think there are appropriate times to let some things go, and that's hard because I think, again, culturally, our culture is do it all, be it all, hustle, run at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And that is just not sustainable. And so I think, you recognizing that you needed to let part of that part of your life go, but maintain, what can I really do and do it to the level that I want to? You can hang on to a portion of it, but letting go of things is challenging for sure. It's hard, but sometimes it's really necessary for ourselves,
Well, and the letting go of that, it came with lots of wrestling. It came with, originally, if I really think back to when I was just kind of like sensing a change, of transitioning from having my own business to then really saying yes, there was even a full 2 years of noticing different things. So my business was primarily through social media. So I would notice things like I was just feeling so depleted of showing up all the time. And so I would take sabbaticals. It might be 6 weeks or a couple of months, or at one point I removed myself from social media for about 6 months. It came through lots of reflecting and kind of noticing that, wow, I don't have the energy for this. And that was hard to admit. Like, man, I used to be able to do X, Y, and Z and do it very well. And now I'm only able to do Z. And I'm kind of struggling to do that if I want to be perfectly honest. And so much of the realization of what I have the capacity for has come through deep internal wrestling.
Yeah. It really is. I'm so with you on that. I've gone through periods of my life that are like that. And now I'm really in this mindset of simplifying, whittling things down, streamlining things because my capacity is so much. And I was running myself ragged, trying to do and be all the things. And when you and it's hard. I'm not saying this is an easy process. You can probably attest to this because we want to do the things, especially when it's things like coming alongside other people as they're healing and exploring their relationship with Christ and all those kind of things, like those are things you want to do, right? You want to do that with people and to say, I'm going to do it maybe in this way.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to do it like this, or maybe I'm going to do it twice a year instead of the constant barrage of the social media side of things. I mean, but it's hard. It's not an easy journey to go through, but so necessary. And I think it's so at the end, when you can kind of be on the other side of it and look back, you can say, oh yeah, okay. That's what, this is why I went through all of that, so that now I can feel a little more at peace.
Yes.
A little more, where I want to be. But, and those periods come up in our lives at different times. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of it as well. You mentioned in terms of the work at Mission of Hope and some of the work that you were doing in your coaching practice, also focused on recovery, addiction recovery, and you have a personal experience with that. Would you mind sharing as much as you're comfortable sharing about your journey and how it's kind of informed all this, wonderful work that you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been kind of on this recovery road for almost 10 years. And it's interesting because it wasn't ever something that I would have thought that I would personally put out there. Mm-hmm. And really kind of how that came about, I was approaching my 1 year of being drug and alcohol free. For me, I did have, I could go months without drinking, but then there would be like that wedding or that football game or, that event. And then I would just be like, I'll just have one. But that rarely happened in my book. And then when alcohol wasn't enough, I incorporated cocaine in the mix. And that was really for a large portion of my life. I mean, probably close to 20 years, really. My dad passed away right after I had graduated high school. And I mean, I was such a daddy's girl. I was so close with my dad, and I didn't want to be sad.
Yeah.
And I knew at that time in my life that alcohol allowed me to keep being fun Jenny. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did in order to, and not that I was consciously doing that as an 18-year-old girl, but that's really kind of what I was doing. I was coping with as best as I knew how at that point in my life. And so, on my 30th birthday, I said I was done drinking, and I meant it, but I didn't get sober for another almost 5 years. And so when I was approaching 1 year of sobriety, what I noticed was starting to happen was that I was really kind of embarrassed or ashamed that I was going to these meetings. For me, what was really kind of helping me, I mean, there's been lots of things that have helped me on this journey. At the time, I was going to 12-step meetings regularly, and I was just feeling kind of embarrassed about that. And the enemy is very sneaky. And I just started to think like, I really need to get a handle on this, because I don't want my embarrassment that I'm getting help to actually lead me back to drinking. And so I thought, what can I do that, really puts it out there? And so I thought, well, I'm just going to put it on Facebook. Yeah. I'm just going to air it all. No one knows it. I'm just going to air everything on Facebook.
Rip that Band-Aid right off. Just why not? Go for it, right?
And so that's what I did. And I still remember I was kind of, typing the post, and I went to push, the button to post it, and it was like my thumb froze. Oh. And as soon as I did, there was this huge relief that like, now I'm not hiding, because that's really kind of was so much a part of my journey, is I felt like I was living this double life, because when I was drinking and using, I was a church going gal. And so I felt like there was like this split, and that also carried with it so much guilt and shame. And so anyway, what ended up happening is I posted that and I put it on social media, and then I was like flooded with comments in the post, with private messages that were coming through on Messenger of, wow, Jenny, I had no idea. Because realistically, even before that, people knew me on social media as a fitness competitor. This is a whole nother topic, probably for a whole nother show, but I spent 6 years as a fitness competitor. Yeah. So people saw me as kind of this like fitness gal, healthy, things like that. And so in putting that out there, people were kind of like, wow, oh my goodness, I had no idea. But then also sharing, I've been struggling, or I have a family member who's struggling. And so from there, then I just started sharing more openly about my struggles, which kind of led me down this path of coaching. And I started coaching women through their struggles, not always specifically in the recovery realm, but just healing and grief and a lot of the hard heart areas. Yeah. And so it's been a journey. I can't believe it's been almost a decade, because for me, everything, when I stopped, I just quit, like alcohol, smoking, drugs. I mean, everything. The moment I was like done, I was done. Yeah. And not everyone's recovery journey looks like that. And there are multiple pathways to recovery. And so for me, it is complete abstinence. I feel like that just does not align. Yeah. And so I'm grateful. I can't imagine going back to that, but I do have people I know that are struggling terribly. Friends, family, people, our neighbors that come into Mission of Hope. And so it is kind of always still within my vision. Yeah. And I'm grateful that God allows me to still come alongside individuals or families during those times, and just to share my experience, strength, and hope. I mean, that's really all it is at this point. Yeah. And so I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful that while it is a part of my story, it's not who I am.
No, absolutely. It does not define you. And yet your story can give hope to others who might be in the same boat or going through it, whether it's themselves, a family member, a loved one, what have you. I think it's powerful when we share our stories. So first of all, thank you for sharing that story with us, your journey. But I think it's powerful when we share, if we're willing to raise our hand first and be brave and share our heart with someone, especially a topic like that, where it's really hard. There's so much that comes along with addiction and why people become addicted, and it's a disease and all the things that people go through. And for them to hear you say, I've been there. I know what you're going through. You can give them that firsthand experience and that hope, and that's so powerful. It's so powerful. And I agree. I think it's different time for everyone to feel comfortable sharing. You were talking about putting the post out there and just being like, and pausing and your thumb freezing before you push the post button. But you think about, what if you hadn't, and you've gotten connected to so many people who, and you don't know, right? Too. I think like people, you said they started to message you about their own struggles or family members or whatever. And because I think so many people do hide, and they are ashamed, and they shouldn't be, but they are. It's just part of it. And, thank God your thumb didn't completely freeze and you posted, and, putting it out there. It's so powerful. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, was for times like this, when someone may have gone through something difficult, or they might still be in the midst of it, but being able to say, I'm me too. I've been there, I've done that, or I've experienced that. There will be somebody listening to this episode that's going to hear your story, that's going to recognize that maybe they're in it, or their family members in it, and will give them some hope, and maybe it will give them encouragement to reach out, to someone for help, or take a step that they need to take, or whatever. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
And I think the difficult thing in terms of seeking help was that I didn't look like what most people think someone struggling with alcohol or drugs looks like. You know, I hadn't gone to jail. I hadn't gotten an OWI. I hadn't lost a job. I, could have this very, on the outside, well-polished appearance or life. It was more internally the way that I felt. I was on this emotional roller coaster that I wanted off of. Yeah. I didn't like the image staring back at me in the mirror after I would go on a bender. And because I had this relationship with Christ, and really my spiritual director at the time was the first person that I really said, hey, here's what I've been doing. And I'm not quite sure where to go from here. Right. And she just provided like this really safe space for me to be able to contemplate and kind of explore what would it look like if I wasn't engaging in some of these behaviors? Where do I sense God at work in all of this and calling me? What would it look like, if I were to say yes to whatever it might be? And so having that person, my husband has always been very supportive and like, whatever you want to do, go and do it. And, but there's something so special about having that very sacred space to explore that with God.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he is the ultimate healer of our hearts, of our pain, turning to him in those times. And sometimes that's all you can do. You just literally just say, Jesus, help me. That's just literally sometimes all you have the energy or the capacity to do. And that in and of itself can start a trajectory, asking him to come into your heart and to help you, like you said. And it wasn't like she was saying, okay, now here's what you're going to do first. Right. You're going to do that and this and that. She just said, just think about it. She wasn't even saying stop. She was just saying, think about what life might be like. And that's really powerful. Wow. When you said that, I kind of got chills. I was like, oh, wow. Hadn't really thought of it that way. That's really powerful. Well, again, thank you for sharing that. I just want to encourage anyone listening. We'll put some links in show notes of resources. If you or anyone is struggling with, addiction or anything of that nature, to reach out. There are people out there that can help. Again, much like you experienced, providing a safe space to just open up and say, here's what I'm dealing with right now. Yeah. This is where I'm at. This is how things are going. And, that's, I'm so glad that you had that person to talk to about it. So that's amazing. If you were sitting down with someone who is in a season of change, transformation, you said before we started recording, you said, I'm kind of in this right now, actually, myself. But if you were sitting down with someone who's in the middle of a season of considering, or maybe even, thinking about making a change in their life, whatever it might look like, whether it be in their faith life, their professional life, their, well-being, is there anything you would want them to know or any guidance you would have for them as they're in that moment? I know you were kind of saying you were in that moment too, but like, what would you want someone to say to you?
It's tricky because I think, as we were kind of talking about earlier, I do feel like I'm very much in the middle. And while I wish I could say that I had all the answers, what really helps me continually and has helped me in my journey has been to carve out quiet moments for reflection and prayer. This has been something that has been a part of my life before recovery. It's just kind of the anchor, I think, in my life. Yeah. And so I brought with me my journal, and this is very vulnerable. I'm being very vulnerable right now because as someone who's an Enneagram 3, I like for you to think that I got it all going on.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
Really,
yes, ma'am.
This sharing some of my inner thoughts and just very words that are true to my heart is kind of like taking off the mask a little bit, And so I was trying to think, like, what could I share that would really help someone? And so I just want to share just a few words that I've journaled, just as I am also in this time of this midlife time of transition and change.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you for doing that. You can't see us, but Jenny has her journal in front of us. So thank you for being vulnerable in this moment. I appreciate it.
So this is just in April. I wrote, this time of unsureness or transition does not need to be a fear-filled experience. Rather, it is one of growth as new shoots of life sprout up and more of my true self emerges. And much of my writing, I will say, kind of goes from like self-reflection into prayer. So you may see that kind of reflected in here. Yeah. This was just in May. This is a place of deepening, darkness, mystery, wondering. A time to try things on and see if they fit. A time to shed and let go. A time to embrace and behold. A time to grow and settle in. And sometimes my writings might go into a poem or something, a prayer. And so this was just a little prayer that I wrote. Stirrer of hearts, help me to bravely and courageously explore the untapped places within. May I find curiosity and joy as I wander into the dark. May I continuously be reminded of your presence, always with, always guiding. Thank you for eyes that see your beauty in all seasons. My soul waits for and with you. Amen.
That's beautiful.
And so, really, the best advice that I could give would be to just be in whatever it is that you are in. And that's difficult. A few months ago, I was really feeling very my emotions felt all over the place. I'm in this job that I'm still questioning, and it just felt like so many things had been flipped upside down. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, I sought out help from a therapist. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I went, I sort of knew internally, this isn't what I need. And not to knock therapy, because there's been other times in my life that I've utilized that. But I just really sensed this is not what I need right now. And so as I took those noticings and that awareness to prayer and just sort of sat with that, the question that kind of surfaced was, what if what I'm experiencing is not something that needs to be quote unquote fixed, but rather experienced? Yeah. We have a tendency in our culture to push away the things that feel dark or heavy or, but really the darkness can be a time for growth and transformation. And so that in and of itself is not something new for me. I feel like I've had a lot of that throughout my journey. But I'm grateful that today, now this could change, Nicole.
Yeah,
well, here in a couple of weeks, right? Because this midlife journey is very interesting. But today, I'm finding peace in the unknowing. But it's sort of like a moment by moment peace. That if I just stay in the here and now, that there's peace, and God is with me. And what has also surfaced through this time of kind of questioning and transition has been a deeper awareness of how God is with me and God's love for me and who I am. And so that to me feels like that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Right. And to allow it to be enough. I think we always think, well, it needs to be that. And it's like, no, sit in that. Like you said, sit in that respite, I feel like sometimes that is God's peace and love. And we don't allow ourselves to do that, I think, and really sit in that. And it's so powerful. And it has a way, I think, like to your point, of allowing us to just experience the moment for what it is, or that stage, or that day for what it is. And instead of saying, oh, I've got to run and fix this over here, and I've got to, this isn't feeling right, I need to get away from that, kind of the fight or flight kind of situation happening. Let's just sit in it and let God do what he's going to do, and know that he's for us, he's with us. And, that in and of itself that's great. And I think if we all did that more, we would probably feel a little differently about these seasons of our lives. But I love that. And thank you for sharing your journal. That is beautiful, first of all.
Thank you.
And I'm a big journaler myself. And so I can also speak to the power that just getting things out like that on paper can have. So encourage journaling, love journaling.
Yes.
And it's fun to also then go back then and read entries you've written of prayers answered. And you go back a year or two or whatever, and you read what you were going through at the time, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that, this happened, or that was handled, or whatever, it's kind of cool to do that. So I'm a big journaler myself. So,
and I did have, actually, before I forget, I did have a few questions that I would like to just pose to the listeners that they could take and reflect and maybe utilize that in their own journal.
Yes, please do that.
The first question is, what are you noticing about yourself during blank? So during this time of transition or change, during this new role, during this time of uncertainty, what are you noticing about yourself? Are you able to name or put words to how you're feeling or what you're experiencing?
Yeah.
There's been freedom in that for me personally, of being able to name, oh yeah, there's grief in letting go of these parts of myself. There is sadness around this. There's fear in what I'm currently walking through. Those being able to name and put words to what I'm feeling and experiencing has been very freeing. So I just wanted to offer that to the listeners, that if they, maybe journaling isn't a part of what they're doing, and that could just be maybe something that opens the doorway to some deeper awarenesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I love the question about naming, because I think we tend to we feel something, we let it kind of flow through us and go, and we push it down. We don't acknowledge it. I think acknowledging those emotions or those feelings or those sensations that we're having is really important. It's an important step to whether it be healing that needs to happen or awareness and acknowledgement that needs to happen. So yes, those are great questions. I will also put those in the show notes as well. So if people want to go back and reflect on that, whether you're a journaler or not, if you just want to think about it, that's fine too.
Yep.
But I think it's important that we pause and take a moment and acknowledge those things. So that's great. Thank you for doing that. This has been great. I think we could probably talk all day. I don't know what you have going on for the next couple hours, but this episode could be like a whole thing. But I just appreciate you sharing so much about the season that you're in, things that you've experienced, and how you have continued to use the gifts that you have to help those in our community and help others navigate these times. And so thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram @Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.